Uncertainty, honestly, it sucks. Thing is, you, as you are right now, yes, right now, you have the ability to face it with confidence. Keep nothing simple. Let's dive into that. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow learner, Michael Klucas, and in this show, we boil down complex topics into simple, actionable tips. So starting off with, as I said, uncertainty, honestly, we know that it is the bane of our existence at times. Like, it can be so annoying and so frustrating to be like, I don't know what I'm doing next. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. There's a lot of stress that gets involved with that, which actually leads us into the first segment of the show, the setup. So half of Gen Z is anxious and stressed. I almost said strengtious, which sounds stupid, and I'm not going to try to make that a thing. But you Google it. Like, you simply Google it. Like, half of Gen Z is stressed. You're going to get article after article that says, hey, about half of Gen Z is very anxious and very stressed. Like, there's no denying that. And that is a problem. Because no matter how we try to shape it up, if we're looking left, right, up, down, there's a crisis happening, and that wears on us a whole lot, especially in a landscape in which we have 24/7 access to information, news, and updates. And everywhere we look, there always seems to be something happening, and that's not a good thing. And I say that because with all these events hitting us during our young adult lives, during some of the most formative years that we will probably ever have or can ever have, not probably, but it's possible, it can feel like things are out of our control. And when that happens, there is just this increase in uncertainty because we don't know what's going to happen next. It can be very hard to predict what happens next when there is so many once-in-a-lifetime events happening one after another, because that in of itself is contradictory. It was supposed to be once in a lifetime. Why would there be 5 of them back to back to back? To back to back. And it's not to say that it's just Gen Z as a whole that is anxious and stressed. With so many things that happened within the course of the pandemic and within the past 5 years, there has been just an uptick in stress with the entirety of the world. There's been so much anxiety because we do live in uncertain times. There is rapid advancement in so many different fields, so many different areas, but that also means rapid change and a lot of things happening that we just could not see coming. Like, who 5 years ago would have predicted ChatGPT and OpenAI and the impacts it would have on us and our world and where we're going as a civilization? That wasn't definitely on my bingo card back then. But ultimately, it's still coming up to this point where it's like there's so much that we just can't predict. But the neat part is Gen Z is actually still optimistic about this. So that actually leads us into the next segment here, conflict and conversations. So as I said in the beginning, you as you are right now have the ability to face uncertainty with confidence. And this may not always feel like the most truthful thing because none of us like to be able to say, or like to have to say, oh, I'm so anxious about this, or I'm so uncertain about this. It's fine. Whoops. It's fine. There's going to be no issues here. No, that doesn't tend to be how we react. But the thing is, by putting the narratives aside that just as a whole Gen Z is anxious and stressed, we can actually learn to embrace some of these uncertainties as opportunities. And that provides us with a whole new perspective and a whole new landscape to move from. Of course, that does mean overcoming the first mental hurdle here of how uncertainty impacts us overall. And so trying to see them as opportunities instead can be a reframing of, well, I don't know where, say, technology is going to go. This is where the job board 8,000 hours comes in, or the nonprofit 80,000 hours. It's like, okay, cool. I don't know where technology wants to go. I'm a little bit concerned about it. I actually want to get involved with it. Let me see what jobs I can do or what fields I can get into that can allow me to have a positive impact on that, or can allow me to actually get my feet in the water or my foot in the door and help drive some of the things that are happening. There's an opportunity there. Same thing with, again, once in a lifetime events being back to back to back, opportunity there exists in terms of like, well, how can I serve others during these times? How can I help others either navigate these changes themselves, or how can I make sure that I'm taking care of those within my circle or my social circle, my close friend groups? There's an opportunity there. Even for myself, as an example, like when I first got into the workforce in 2020, it was me seeing that there was going to be a potential gap here, and come to find a couple years later, once I had moved and once I had gotten to the next level of my career again, I realized I want to be able to help, other Gen Z, other young professionals get into the workforce, because so much changed, so much was going to be different. So that meant there was an opportunity there among all the uncertainty. And it just depended on how I was looking at the situation. However, I want to emphasize first and foremost, though, that uncertainty and mental fatigue is hard. It's not easy to navigate, because with the introduction of like the 24/7 news cycle, and now with the introduction of social media into our lives and into just the daily routines that we have, it can be so hard to turn off just the faucet of information that's coming at us at all times. Because we're described as true digital natives. So this is a report from McKinsey. So the first Gen Zers were born when the internet had just achieved widespread use, and they were called digital natives. The first generation to grow up with the internet as a part of our daily lives. And that is still very true. There's been so many points in which internet and the use of technology has just seeped into who we are as people, who we are as a society, and then what we're capable of because of our access to it. It's not a bad thing, but again, going from uncertainty and thinking about opportunities, that means there exists a whole realm of opportunities based on that very fact. Because this also, though, makes us the always on generation too, because even beyond the 24/7 news cycle, we are instead having access to more information from more parts of the world than ever before. And that itself runs the risk of just being overwhelming. Because the reason why I say we have to reframe our thinking from the uncertainty opportunities here is the fact that in this article by Axios, which is more kind of like an article roundup, Gen Z surprise optimism about the future was written in September 2023. And it goes from a Gallup poll, which was released on Thursday, that we feel overwhelmingly optimistic, actually, about our futures. And 76% of Gen Z said that they have a great future ahead of them, but just about 44% of us reported feeling prepared for it, which, again, goes to show that with the constant access to information, the constant stream of news and articles that we have access to, that we have to be very conscious about the fact that we know that there's a lot of good in the world. We also know that there's a balance between what's going on and what's being promoted, because we have negativity bias ingrained in all of us. The natural part of our evolutionary cycle in which negativity bias kept us alive still exists today, to the point in which we say, okay, we will focus more on the negative, because that takes a much larger space within our mind that, lives kind of rent-free in our heads so much easier than to say all the positive things to come. But that does then again go to show that we think we have a great future ahead of us. We believe we have a great future ahead of us. We just still have negativity bias, and we see all the uncertainty, all the overwhelm, and all the bad that comes with it. And so about less than half of us feel prepared for it, which is a little bit concerning. But again, trying to think about it in a positive aspect here means there's an opportunity for us to grow into that number in a more true capacity. And honestly, I think one of the keys here to helping you address uncertainty with confidence today is to borrow that confidence from your future self. Let me explain in the next segment, transformations. If you saw my last podcast episode, you would know it's all about goal setting and resetting your life for 2024. And I talked about an article by Psychology Today where it talked about with our goal setting, that tends to be our rational, logical, future-oriented self. In this article by Axios, it revealed that 82% of us believe that we will achieve their goals. So taking that and kind of correlating it together, I'm gonna connect the dots here. If you can't see me on if you're not watching this on YouTube, but I'm connecting the dots. The thing here means that we can take that understanding and that confidence from our future selves and implement a bit more into who we are and where we are today. And what I mean by this is, in overcoming uncertainty, it's less about having the right answer and instead having conviction, a stronger conviction of like, all right, I know I'm going to reach my goal. I know I'm going to make that happen. I can take some of that confidence, some of that understanding, and some of that certainty and weave it into where I am today to make life easier on myself and just make life feel less overwhelming. And the conviction doesn't need to be anything super crazy, but it can just be that strong belief and that value held that you will make something happen and you will make that change come to pass. And honestly, with a new year, that means new changes, and that means a lot more uncertainty is going to be introduced. But this goes back to the fact that reading in between the lines here is that there's a lot of optimism, according to the Axios article. When you're young, there's a certain amount of anxiety as well. And we need support, we need guidance, and we at times can feel lost in this complicated world, but that doesn't mean that we're unable to navigate it. Instead, it means that if we are getting clear on what is important to us, getting clear on our convictions, getting clear on our goals and our whys, just as I mentioned in my last episode, that's going to make it so much easier to navigate what's going to happen in the future, whether we know what's going to happen or not, because we will have an understanding of what makes us tick, what makes us feel capable, and how we can replicate that consistently throughout our lives and throughout our careers. Because once you have that motivator and that motivation more ingrained within your personality and within your personal self-awareness and understanding, that's going to make it so much easier to navigate uncertainty when the next situation arises. Because ultimately, I can say with certainty that the only thing that I can rely on is change, and that change will occur within the future because nothing is set in stone and things obviously will evolve and adapt. And that just means that we can evolve and adapt too by, again, borrowing from our future selves that confidence that they will get to where they are and that we can make it happen. And that does mean to say then that the ways in which you can overcome uncertainty with confidence, especially going into this new year, is first and foremost with intention and with confidence. Those go hand in hand. But then the other two legs to this, I would say, I'm going to call it like the certainty table. So you have your intention, your confidence for your actions, but then also optimism and conviction that you are writing your own story, that you are in charge of your own narrative. No matter what happens in the world, no matter what is coming your way, you yourself are the one that gets to write what happens next, because you can only ever control what you do, how you react, and where you go based on the steps that you take. And I will say, sometimes it just means that you have to turn off the news, you have to delete your social media apps, or you have to just make sure that you are focusing on the positives of the present rather than projecting yourself into situations, into the negative news cycle, and letting yourself buy into just all the things that's going quote unquote wrong, and instead focus on where you're at today and where you want to be tomorrow. Other times, it's you being very distinct about what steps you're taking that are creating the positive changes in your life, because 80% of our results can come from 20% of our inputs, and so we have to focus on the good 20% to get the right 80% that we want. So I encourage you to stand by your convictions, borrow from your future self, because if you are following your goals with a true understanding of why you want them and how you're going to get them, have confidence. Know that you will make it happen. Just have to be looking at the right time horizon and understanding that change is inevitable, but that doesn't mean you have to get swept away by it. You can write your own story and do so in a way that's meaningful to you. Keep it simple. If you watch this on YouTube, make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, make sure that you also leave us a rating. It helps out the show and recommends it to other people just like you. Have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode.